When your voice feels like it's been taken away by trauma, how do you learn to speak again? This week on That Was the Moment, my guest Amanda reflects on the moment that her dad left and how it had ripple effects on her confidence, self-esteem, and her voice. From silent suffering to becoming a trauma-informed chiropractor, Amanda shares her story. I'm your host, Dashanka, and you're listening to That Was the Moment My Father Left, taking my confidence and voice with him. My guest today is Dr. Amanda Chan. Amanda is a chiropractor who teaches about nervous system regulation. Thank you so much for being here today, Amanda. It's so great to have you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Tell us about what life was like before your moment.
Okay, so before my moment, when I was really, really young, my father decided to leave our family. And so he left my mom and my brother and I. And what he did was when he left, he also took all the money from the bank accounts and drained everything. And so my mom was really left with two really, really young children. Like, I don't even remember it. And so from there, that moment, I became a different person. Mm-hmm. Before then, I used to be outgoing, and my mom said I talked a lot. And then after that, she said that, and I knew this when I was going through school, I didn't use my voice at all. Like, I would never raise my hand. Never would I raise my hand in class. Mm. And when I had to do a presentation, like, they tell you, you have to do a speech in front of your class. That would probably be something that would have caused me stress for like the entire year until I did my presentation. And this lasted throughout schooling, throughout everything until later.
Oh, that's crazy. So do you remember how old you were when he left?
Probably around 5, maybe a little younger than that.
And now we're learning so much more about like our brains and our development, that is such a crucial age for our development.
Yes. And I know from a nervous system perspective, the trauma would have cemented in, my body and in my nervous system. And then anything that could make it look like someone would leave, I would have a reaction in a way to make them not.
So tell us about your moment.
Like I said, I didn't speak a lot. Most people would probably say I was the shyest person in the class. Mm-hmm. This was through high school. It would have been through university, even into chiropractic school. And then in about the second or third year, I started to have some symptoms in my body. And we didn't know what it was at first. And so we kept looking at it. And, I went to regular medical health professionals. I went to alternative health professionals, and we couldn't figure out what was wrong. And then I started taking medication for something, but it didn't work very well because I don't respond very well to medication. I actually usually end up throwing it up, or my body just doesn't take it. So I had to go into other ways. And I said, what else could this be? What else could it mean? And it ended up being an issue with my thyroid in the end. And thyroid has to do with your voice. And I said, of course it's the voice. I have not been using it. And if you, in your body, if you don't use something, then you start to lose your voice. And so you don't get to use it anymore, right? Same with like when you're a baby and you could do the splits. And if you don't continue to do the splits, you won't be able to anymore. So if I didn't use my voice, and if I did not speak up, and all the times where I did not honor who I was, and I let that sit in me, of course it's going to go after the thyroid.
That is so interesting. When you were sitting in the class, if you remember, did you have any internal dialogue with just say that, but then suppressing it? Or was your internal dialogue also kind of stifled?
It would be more of the first one. Mm-hmm. So I remember times where people would say, raise your hand if you know the answer. And I'm like, I know the answer. Just say it. And I couldn't say it out. And there was one time I remember in about grade 7, and we were doing these brain twisters, and they said, okay, explain how this situation could happen. And I was like, I know the answer. No one else knew it. So I hit the person beside me, and I was like, this is the answer. And so she put up her hand, and she was like, Amanda says that this is the answer. I was like, oh no, don't do that. And it was the answer.
Once you figured out it was your thyroid and it was linked to your voice, how did you get back to the fact that it went to your dad leaving?
I knew that there were several times that in my life where big events had happened and they changed the course of who I was. And when I trace back to, okay, so when have I ever spoken up? It's never. Okay, why would I not have spoken up? Oh, I would be afraid that someone would leave me, or that I wasn't a good child, or something, I wasn't loved, or I wasn't enough. And so tracing it back even further than that, okay, so when did I feel that I didn't have love, right? And then, of course, the moment came when it's like, oh, when you were abandoned. How could you feel fully loved if even your parent won't stay for you, right?
Yeah. And how old were you when you made these discoveries?
I think my third year of chiropractic school in the summer, and I was having these health issues, and I couldn't, like I said, we were still trying to figure out what they were. And I decided, okay, I know that laughter is healing. I know that having a good mindset can help in so many ways. So I actually went to the library and I took out any funny book that I could find, like from out of biographies of comedians, anything that would, comic books, anything that would make me laugh, because I'd learned in school that laughter is healing. So I started reading these books and started laughing. And then eventually I found my way into, personal growth books and spiritual growth books. So, I was listening to, of course, Tony Robbins, right?
Everyone starts with Tony.
Everyone starts with Tony. And as I started to read that, I said, wow, if I can shift who I am and who I am being, it changes the biochemistry of my body. It changes who I am. And so in cellular biology, you need to turn on the genes in the body. So just because you have a gene doesn't mean it's expressed. You have to create the environment, it's called epigenetics, for the cell to express itself. And so just because you have the gene for, let's say, breast cancer and it runs in your family, if you don't create the environment for the cell to express the gene, then it won't necessarily turn on. So you're not guaranteed it just because. And so with that, if you switch the biochemistry of your body, then you can change some of the outcomes in your life.
How do you do that? That sounds amazing.
Yeah, so it's not difficult, but it's about a shift in perception. So you got to do the, let's say, physical shifts, emotional, mental, and spiritual level, right? And spiritual is whatever you believe it to be, whether you believe in the universe, God, spirit, source, your higher self, whatever that is. Okay, physically, let's say somebody comes in with low back. Let's go with that because it's an easy one to talk about. In Canada, we have a lot of snow. They'll come in and I'll say, how did you get low back pain? And they'll be like, I was out shoveling. And the first thing people will say is, it's because of my physical, like I was lifting too much snow. I was carrying too much. Awesome. I do want to know about that. I want to know how much snow you're lifting, how, your normal exercise routine, your more normal movement routine. And from a physical point of view, if you never move and then you go out and shovel a whole bunch of snow, I could see how that would hurt your back, right?
Yeah.
From a physical point of view. But I also want to know, what were you thinking of when you were shoveling? Were you saying, am I the only one out here shoveling? How come nobody is here helping me? Right? And then your back goes up. Or maybe you were saying, I hate my job, I hate my job, I hate my job while you were shoveling. So then you're adding the emotional, mental aspect of what's happening. So when we go to look at something physical, we want to see what other emotional and mental factors are there that are participating in what's going on right now.
Yeah, because it's not just the physical. Sometimes the physical is masking the underlying issue. There's that saying that your body first starts with a whisper and then eventually it screams. And so your dad leaving you at such a young age, how did that affect all your other relationships?
I became a chronic people pleaser. So I would give up my sense of self in order to please everybody else around me, so that I could feel. Leave. So they don't leave, right? So a lot of it had to do with, it came down to, I didn't even know who I was, because I could be a chameleon and change to whoever I needed to be. Now, with that, there's really good things that happen from there, right? And then there's also ones that are also skills that you develop that are not so great, and patterns that are not great. So the idea would be to integrate, keep what you did develop, the skills that you did develop, like the ability to read other people, to know their emotions, to be compassionate towards them because you know what it feels like. And then the part of giving up yourself, we can shift our relationship with that.
And what sort of stuff did you do to change that relationship with yourself?
A lot of it went back to, when a traumatic event happens, there's the event and then the meaning that we give it. Mm-hmm. And so I had to go back to say, is this true? And it's coming from a 5-year-old point of view, right? And if you look at, let's say you're 5 years old, and even something as simple as you're like, I want a red bicycle for my birthday, and your parents don't give you a red bicycle, and you say that means they don't love me. It could mean that you have a blue bicycle. They wanted to give you something else, right? So many other things could have meaning for it, except you chose, because you were 5, to say they don't love me. So I asked, what else could it mean? Does it mean that because somebody left that they don't love you? No, because sometimes people leave in order to love you, right? So I had to make it so that it might not be true. What my interpretation of it could have been different. And so from there, my nervous system goes, okay, if there could be other possibilities, and it doesn't have to be stuck in this position, in the same thought every single time that this is what it means, then there is an opening for change.
Did you do all of this exploration and I guess inner work on your own, or did you have help from a therapist, counselor, or was it all just self-guided?
No, it's always guided with others. I work best in community. So the type of chiropractic I do is very light touch and gentle, and it's a lot of somatic work, and there's breath work associated with it. I also do yoga, and then I also work with other, like a naturopath, right? I work with different people in order to assimilate everything put together. And then I still read books, and I have mentors and coaches and people that I follow that resonate with me for now, so that I can keep putting the next place in. Because one of the beliefs I have is that the universe will send you what you need to know in the places that you're willing to listen to them, right? So whether that be a friend, a phone call, something even I read on social media, or a book that I'm reading, or a new course that I'm taking, I will get the information that I need for the next step.
So that is basically why I started this podcast. The hope that someone out there listening, this conversation or another conversation, can be that thing that they needed to hear, that moment of clarity. So
that's beautiful. I love it.
And so what about romantic relationships? How did that go?
At first, when I wasn't aware of my patterns, like I said before, to people please to the death. So I became a desirable partner in terms of I would do anything, right? Yeah. I would do anything. I would sacrifice everything. But then I didn't become happy because I spent my time giving everything away. Mm-hmm. So once I became more aware of who I was, then things started to get easier. And I'm married and I have kids, so I have a family. And it's always knowing that multiple truths can exist at once. And for different people, they can have different truths, but we can all still coexist. And what might be true for me right now might not be true for me 10 years from now, right? You can change your mind. You can like potato chips right now and not like it, and that's okay. So the idea is not to be like, this is my truth and this is what I'm standing on, and this is, because it might change.
Yes. So it's interesting you say that. I worked through some of my childhood issues. Maybe about a couple of years ago, I felt like in a really good place. And mine was feeling unloved and unwanted, not quite abandoned, but just unwanted. And I think that's just such a common thing. And it's also, as you were saying, it's based on something from a 5-year-old's perspective. For me, it was when I was 3. So it's a memory from when I was 3 that isn't a true representation of my life and my situation. And so a couple of years ago, I did a lot of inner work, and I finally felt like, yes, I've got my self-worth and blah, blah, blah. And now what I'm finding is, earlier you were talking about it has to be the right environment for it to come out. And so in the last couple of months, new stuff from my childhood has been coming out. And I was like, hang on a second, but I've dealt with all of this. It's kind of similar, but I'm seeing it in different ways. And some of my reactions and behaviors are very much of my 5, 6, and 7-year-old self. And I just thought that was so interesting because it's like there's constantly new layers of healing and to go deeper. And things that I kind of forgot about have now got a different meaning. But when I go back to my childhood, I can say, okay, that's the point that it happened at. And I feel like the journey of self-love never ends. We're constantly evolving, and those new environments bring out those things so that they can be healed. Have you had similar situations?
Well, it sounds like you went from 3 to 6 years old, so you definitely evolved in there.
It's only taken me 45 years, but I'm now 6.
I think you're right. I love the evolution, right? Somewhere along the way, we told people, okay, after you're done school, you don't have to learn anymore. And that's so far from the truth, right? Because we're constantly learning and evolving and growing. And so if we are still having the same thought patterns as we did, 25 years ago, like the cost of eggs are not the same as they are now, right? Then are we evolving, or are parts of us stuck in a previous timeline?
Yes, definitely. Oh, wow. Yeah. I agree with that for sure. What's life like for you now?
Life is busy, right? No, my kids are a little older now, but when they were really, really young, I had another shift where everything had to be about them, like especially when you're nursing and you're up at night and all the things with babies. And the latest shift was I started to realize, as they have been growing older and becoming a little bit more independent, it was time to shift back to me because I had gone out of a pattern. So I've been able to add more personal growth. I work out quite a bit because I enjoy moving my body, and not necessarily working out, but even going for a walk. I realize how important reading is for me. I love to read. And so adding those parts of me into my day reminds me not to forget about me.
And it's a very common thing. I don't have kids, just a fur baby, but I hear from my sisters, friends, and other guests on the show, it's so easy to lose yourself once children come along because they become your priority. And actually, I read an interesting thing on Instagram. I don't know who shared it, but it was talking about in a marriage, the importance of prioritizing your marriage above your children. And at first I was kind of like, oh, hang on a second. When I had time to really think about it, it makes so much sense, because you want those kids to grow up in a loving, caring environment. And if you aren't concentrating on your relationship, and that's also what they're going to be seeing and what they're going to be molded from, right? Very often, a lot of our relationships mirror either our mother or our father. So at first I was kind of like, oh, I don't know if I agree with this. It does make a lot of sense.
It's interesting you bring that up, because that my husband is the one who brought that to my attention. I guess he read the same thing, or he believes the same thing as you, but he's like, we are our number one, priority. Well, actually I say, first of all, you are your number one priority. Yes. So he's like, yes, I agree with that. Our agreement is we are each our number one priority, because or else we wouldn't be here, right? And then we have to make our relationship a high priority, and then the kids come. Now, obviously, in an emergency situation or whatever, right? There are times where it's the kid, but even in just having one person be the reminder of that is helpful for both parties, because everyone's going to have different thoughts at different times, but at least one person can say, hey, remember, we need time for ourselves. Yes. Oh, yes. I got that. I remember.
But it is also a weird concept, right? Because we're all told that children have to be the center of your universe. Like, don't have children unless they can be the center of your universe. Otherwise, you're a bad mother, bad father. And so, again, it's that mindset shift, looking at things from a different perspective.
Well, when I look at it as in, there's a season for where I'm going to be putting more emphasis on my children, especially when they're a baby, and we're both going to be doing that. And also there's going to be a season when they're that young, right? And in the end, after when they leave, I'm still going to be with my husband. So we need to be able to be strong still. Like, what if I can't just not know him in 20 years from now because I'm raising children, right? We can't forget who we are, because then we'll grow apart.
Yes.
And so there's a season to everything, and not everything has to be in balance either at a certain time. Right? There might be a season where you're 80% looking after kids, 20%, and then in a couple months, something else shifts and you're like 80. Okay, our relationship needs 80% right now.
Yeah.
Right? Or whatever percentage it is. So it doesn't have to be always the same percentage, is what I think people don't realize. You could have 70-30 and then next time shift to, like in a couple months, shift to something else, right? It could be a moving thing.
And what about your father? Do you have a relationship with him?
No, I've never seen him again.
Wow. Are you interested in trying to reconnect, or is that just part of your life that he's made the decisions he's made?
I think previously my mom had tried to find him and she wasn't able to. So after that, I never made the connection. Like, I never tried to connect again.
And how was your sibling affected by this? Because this is another interesting thing that I'm finding. I have 3 siblings, and all 4 of us have very different experiences because of the ages that we were and the development stages that we were in. So our perceptions were very different, and even our memories are very different. So how has this affected your sibling?
I don't think he remembers a time where it wasn't just the 3 of us. So I'm not quite sure if on one level it's in his cells, but he was a baby. So I really don't think it affected him as much because he wouldn't have remembered it.
Interesting. Before we started recording, you were telling me about what happened 2 weeks ago. Do you want to fill us in on that?
Yes. So we were, as you know, we were supposed to do this podcast 2 weeks ago, and I had to reschedule because when I woke up the morning of the podcast, I had completely lost my voice. I could not even speak. I was squeaking. My daughter was calling me Squeaks. That's what she was saying because she got it first, and so a couple weeks ago we had called her Squeaks, and she's like, "Look, Mommy, now you're Squeaks." I'm like, "Great, yes, I'm Squeaks, and I have a podcast to do, and this is not going to be good." But we rescheduled for today, and the interesting thing that I found, and I only made the connection today, was like, isn't it funny that we talk about the moments of losing and regaining my voice and my inner self and then being able to express that's the day that I cannot speak, literally.
As I said to you, that's actually happened to a couple of my guests. The day of the recording, they've come down with something. I think that's our body kind of saying, today's just not the right time to share this. And our body is so much more intelligent than we are. It could be that maybe it wasn't the right emotional time, or hormonally it wasn't the right time for you to be sharing.
Absolutely. And I wouldn't have been able to come up with the voice part, except that I remember 2 weeks ago I had no voice. I was like, oh, isn't that funny? Right? Like, what a story. So I think it just contributes to the story.
Yeah, definitely. Are there any other situations now where you lose your voice again, or it wants to go back in?
Yeah, so it's still, I wouldn't say it's a battle to do, let's say, presentations and stuff. But what I had to do was when I started doing consistent presentations, I would have to put it on. I did it one every single week. So I put it on the calendar that I was going to do it every single week. And there were times where I'm like, please no one come. Please no one come. And please cancel it. Please cancel it. But when it's on your schedule every single week, eventually your nervous system goes, okay, someone's going to come, because now I'm spending every single week, I'm spending an extra hour here waiting for people who are not coming, right? So it is just little steps over time. Right now, not much anymore, unless, let's say, it's in another language. So like if I had to do a French presentation, then I might go, what if my words don't come out properly? But in English, it's fine.
Yeah. I think it's so brave that you are now sharing your story. I think that is also healing in itself, just sharing your story. I know certainly it has been for me.
Yeah. And if even one person, as you said, like the reason that you created this podcast is if even one person it makes a difference for, or it makes them think, maybe I can change my circumstance, or maybe I can see something a little differently, or change my perception in some way, and it helps somebody trigger anything, then beautiful.
That's definitely the aim of the podcast. That incredible link between your mind and your body, and the fact that we store emotions in our body. And I've had so many other guests talk about this. So many people walk around with, I've had this neck ache all my life, so I just get on with it because this is what happened. I was in a car crash, blah, blah, blah. And so many of those little illnesses or things that are uncomfortable, people don't have to live with that. And sometimes it just takes a little bit of exploration to find out where it's come from, what started it. So if you take us through, what are a couple of questions?
I had a patient come in and she twisted her ankle. So then the next question is, okay, what happened? How did that happen? She's like, I slipped down the stairs because I was going down the stairs quickly. Okay. Most people would stop there. They go, okay, she fell down the stairs. Yeah, of course she twisted her ankle. But I want to know, take me back further from that. She said, I was running down the stairs because the phone was ringing and the kettle was going on the stove. I said, okay, so you were in a hurry. She said, yes. And I said, okay, tell me more about that. And she's like, well, actually, I was really stressed out because the last few weeks I've been going full force. You know, my husband is away. I'm taking the kids, like all these things. And I said, what do you think your body is trying to tell you? And she was like, well, I've heard it before, slow down. But it wasn't until I twisted my ankle and I couldn't go fast that I learned I need to slow down. So it's just asking, what else? What else is there underneath?
And I bet that your experiences have given you that first-hand knowledge of helping people. So that must be such a bonus in your chiropractic therapies.
Yes. Well, it's funny. My patients usually tell me, they're like, you need to invest in Kleenex because they end up crying in my office all the time. I'm like, oh boy.
I just came in for a sore back and now you've got me crying. And crying itself is healing. Crying is so healing. Crying helps to remove that stored up energy and trauma. And so that's good.
Yeah.
They're getting a therapy session and a chiropractic session all in one.
All in one.
So is there any advice you would give to someone that's maybe dealing with abandonment issues?
One of the things I said before is that, like, you don't have to do it alone. There are resources, there are people that can support you, there are books that you can borrow from the library. And then also know that we have the capacity, we are created with so much potential and so many gifts. And yes, trauma happens to everybody. One of the funny things I heard was that Earth was a trauma-based learning center. That
is so
and
true.
Everyone has it. Although we don't have the same experiences, we have the same emotions that we experience. So we tend to think we're separate from somebody else because we don't experience, you didn't lose your father, so how could you know what it's like to lose your father? Mm-hmm. But you might know what it feels like to be abandoned because abandoned feels a certain way. So the experience of losing your father in that way might not be what you know, but abandonment, you do know, guilt, you do know, shame, you do know, anger, you know. So we are the same in our ability to experience the emotions, not necessarily the circumstances that bring them about. So if you can connect to somebody in the emotion and say, I know what it's like to be in despair, then you have a connection in order to help each other.
And the way you feel that despair might be different as well, again, because of your past experiences, but It's still the same emotion.
Yeah, so there will also be similar words that you use, like, right, I have this sensation in my chest. It's like a crushing sensation, like it's like suffering. It feels like it's never going to end. You might use similar words to describe it so that you know that this is definitely not joy, right?
In the last couple of weeks, I've been using tapping a lot, EFT, and I think not just the tapping, but the identifying the beliefs around the situations that I want to change has been really eye-opening. You were just talking about the words, and the words are so important. The words that we talk about a situation can really explain what the actual feeling or the underlying cause is. So I was using tapping to help me create a better relationship with alcohol, because I love red wine way too much. So I've been using tapping, and when I was having a tapping session with someone, she was asking me all these questions about my beliefs of the red wine, and I had never quite thought of them before. And then I realized I'm looking for this comfort and closeness from a glass of red wine. And now when I say it, I think how ridiculous. But we make these associations, and very often it comes from a time that we experience trauma, and that trauma doesn't have to be huge or dramatic. It can be the littlest thing, like someone saying something to you and really upsetting you, and you find comfort in that first sip of red wine because it gives you a feeling, and all of a sudden you've made this connection that red wine brings me comfort, makes me feel better. I think just looking at the words associated with what's going on in your life. What do you want to change? Or if you could change something, what would you change? And then investigate the beliefs around it. I think it's fascinating.
Yeah, and what you said is really important too, in terms of what you name it. So if you say I'm angry versus I'm irritated, you might have a different reaction. If someone swerves in front of you and, in the car and you're angry and you want road rage, like if you're raging, you might chase after them, right? But if you're like, I'm a little annoyed that happened, you'd be like, I might call somebody and tell them about it and that's it. Or I just might be like, I'll let it go. But the emotion that you name will change your reaction and change your state along with it.
And then also, what does that remind you of? Like, was there a time in the past that you maybe not got cut off in a car, but someone beat you to something or got in front of you? So maybe you lost that race at school, and it's all just like really triggering stuff. Oh, there was another great saying that I saw on Instagram. What did we do without Instagram? But it was basically talking about how your triggers are just showing you the things that need to be healed. They're showing you what's still unresolved in your nervous system.
And also, like, to remember the next level of it is that we've been the other side of it, right? I've probably sometime in traffic accidentally cut somebody off because I didn't see them, or, the kids are talking and like, whatever it is, I've probably been the other side of it too. And so every time something like that happens, I'm like, have I been the other side of it? And I'll be like, yeah, I'm sure I have. Have I, accidentally raised my voice with somebody because I was irritated? Whatever it is that I'm upset that somebody is doing to me, I'm sure I've done it in the past before. So that usually helps me to go, you're just completing the other side of it.
Because everything is a mirror. Yeah. Is there anything else you'd like to share with us today?
If you are here and you are listening and you are being and you are in the right place. You are here for a reason. You are still here for a reason. Not everybody that went to bed last night is up today. And so with your special day, with your day that you have, what is it that you want to do with that? You're giving skills, talents, gifts. You serve a purpose here. And so you're important and you matter. And with that, what do you want to do about it?
That's beautiful. I love it. If you could be remembered by one word, what would that word be?
Grace.
And what does grace mean for you?
Grace means that I have an ability to find grace in every situation, meaning find the ability to transcend and to give comfort in any situation.
Thank you so much for joining me today, Amanda. I've really enjoyed our conversation. And I'm also going to be putting some of your contact details in our show notes so people can connect with you and find out more about what you do.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening. I hope today's conversation empowers you and inspires you to know that no matter your current situation, your life can change too. All it takes is a moment. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, rate, and share it with a friend. And if you would like to support the podcast, you can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/thatwasthemoment. Until next time, be present in each moment, because you never know when your moment will come, or when you have the gift of being a moment for someone else. Take care.